Yeah, you might. That one's definitely on. Leave it on. Did it for it to get to work. Go ahead and mute the rest of the mics. Test. Okay, so it's
We have adjourned from closed session, and we have taken the following action in regards to setting the sheriff's salary, $154,602. The Register of Deeds, $105,541. The Deputy Tax Administrator, Acting Tax Administrator, $107,544. Clerk to the Board of County Commissioners, $85,000. County Attorney, $209,931. Welcome to the Monday, June 24th, 2019 meeting of the Durham County Board of Commissioners. I will now share the public charge. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and citizens to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow citizens. At any time, should any member of the board or any citizen fail to observe this public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. As a courtesy to others, please turn off cell phones during the meeting. And I will now ask that we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the Republic, one nation, indivisible.
Okay, do we have any agenda adjustments? Seeing none, I will move on to the announcements. Champs Grant presents summer meals. Durham Public Schools and the City of Durham invite all children ages 1 through 18 to free meals served daily, Monday through Friday, during summer vacation, beginning right now, June 17th, through August 9th. Parent meals cost $2, and meals are free for all Durham Housing Authority resident parents. For meal locations, text Food NC to 1-877-877 or call 1-866-348-6479. And for more information, you can also contact Linda Harris at 919-560-2370, extension 26287. And this will also be on our website. National Track and Field Championship in Durham. The 2019 U.S. Track and Field, USATF, Youth Outdoor Championship will take place at the Durham County Memorial Stadium starting tomorrow, June 25th through June 30th. The USATF is the national governing body for track and field, long-distance running, and race walking in the United States. Tickets can be purchased at www.eventbrite.com, and you can also find out more information by emailing ashley.durhamncsports.com. But this is very exciting for us in Durham County. This is the first time for us to be hosting this national championship. So we do encourage people to come out and enjoy the events and enter their youth as well. Fire up the grill for the Bull City Block Party. Join Durham County Public Health, My Brother's Keeper Durham, and other community partners on June 27th from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Walgreens at 1812 Holloway Street. There will be free HIV testing and vendor displays with the block party starting at 4 p.m. The 2019 Russell E. Blunt East Coast Invitational. The Durham Striders are excited to host and celebrate 19 years of this highly competitive track meet. They are looking for athletes ages 8 and under through 17 to 18 years old to enter and participate on Friday, July 19th through July 20th at the Durham County Memorial Stadium. So another great track event.
That already.
No, it's July 19th.
Oh, July. Okay.
For more information on entry deadlines and registrations, please visit www.durhamstriders.com/blunteci. And your help is needed to spread the word about census jobs. Recruiting assistant positions are now available for the 2020 census. North Carolina pay rates are from $15 to $22 per hour, and there are flexible hours available. For more information and to apply, please visit www.2020census.gov/jobs or call 1-855/-JOB job -2020. And are there any other announcements? We also have the minutes for our regular session, May 13th, 2019, regular session, May 28th, 2019, and the May 18th, 2019 PAC 1 minutes.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckhouse, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are all unanimously approved. We have some ceremonial items this evening. First, we have a great recognition of the J. Robert Havlick 2019 Award for Innovation in Local Government. And do we have Eric Marsh here with us? Eric, who is our Strategic Initiatives Analyst, is here to share with us this great news for Durham County. Looks like you have some staff with you as well. So please introduce anyone here that we should know about as well. Eric.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
I am Eric Marsh. I'm the Strategic Initiative Analyst here in the County Manager's Office. This is Tony Thompson. He's one of the Innovate Durham team members. He's with the City of Durham. And then there's also Ben Kittleson. He's not with us tonight, but I definitely want to shout him out because he's always with us out there connecting with the community. But as they mentioned, we received this award for Innovate Durham. Innovate Durham is a 12-week partnership program where city and county departments partner with startups, and we test some of the latest, newest technology and interesting ways of delivering services to our community. It's been a very exciting venture for us. It started as a city program, and then we partnered with them last year, and it's given us access to so many other different kinds of startups, educational technology companies, social entrepreneurs who focus towards like civic tech and trying to solve problems in the healthcare community. So it's just been a really awesome thing. Our 3 pillars forward is to get access to the latest and greatest technology, to build capacity, both internally and externally, and last but not least, support local businesses. And I believe that we've been able to do that. And we're looking forward to going into this 3rd year. Our applications are currently open. So if anybody knows of a startup that you would like to refer in, tell them to apply. It's a very simple application. Applications will be open until the 22nd of next month, July 22nd. And we're just out there now engaging with the community between American Underground, the Frontier, everywhere, trying to recruit and connect with as many startups as we can.
This is awesome, Eric. Thank you for your great work. And Tony? We appreciate you being here from the city as well, and the partnership with the city. And congratulations for being recognized so quickly. This is a national award, is it not?
Yes,
Yeah.
this award is presented by at the TLG conference, which is the Transforming Local Government Conference. And that conference is headed by Alliance for Innovation, of which we're a member of. We've had a city-county team. We had a city team do it, participate in Alliance for Innovation, and now we do it as a county. And it's just an organization that's geared towards supporting city and counties who are focusing on innovation right now and trying to figure out how to do things newer and better. So it's a really great honor.
And can you share with everyone just some of the innovative projects or partners that you've had in the community?
Yes. We have the block party. It's actually co-hosted by one of our cohort members of last year, Digital Links, and they created a human-centered design kind of like digital platform that helps people fill out forms that want to apply for subsidized medication easier. So it just makes it easier. It cuts down on errors. We've dealt with virtual reality, and we're currently, the city and the planning department are partnering with Lucid Dream. They were in our 2017 cohort, and they're helping with communicating to the public what does diversifying and combating affordable housing and such look like. What does that look like? So they've created 3D environments for people to just explore and see what it looks like to change and diversify the different homes that are on a city block. We had 7 last year, and the year before we had 8, and all of them have been really, really successful, and they've opened up, that's what I really love about this, honestly. It's opened up relationships, just ongoing relationships. Lucid Dream, they were 2017, and they continue to work and support us with their creativity to this day.
Fantastic. And Tony, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to, on behalf of the city, personally thank the county and the board for being willing partners in something that sounded like a crazy idea at the time. And if it wasn't for your partnership last year, we probably wouldn't have been able to win that national award and gain national recognition. And we're growing locally, too. We were at an event just last week, and we were handing out flyers because we thought we had to do the grassroots marketing again. And they said, oh, is that time of year again? So we're gaining traction here locally as well. And it's just been a great program, and we're continuing to grow.
Thank you. I wanted to just give any commissioners a chance to hear any comments as well. Well, please send us to Monica the announcement, and at our July meeting, we'll include the information about applying as part of our announcements as well, and try to help
We'll do that.
get the word out. But again, thank you so much. Congratulations. Do you have the award with you, actually, or? Oh,
I think it's right there, yeah.
oh, okay.
Have it for
Wow.
you.
Didn't make it.
Okay.
It's a very nice piece of hardware.
Okay, wow, beautiful. And if you don't mind coming forward so we can all shake your hands as well.
Invite us.
No.
Great job, man. Great job.
And we have another important recognition tonight. Teresa Harrison, if you do not mind coming forward. So Teresa has really stepped up to the plate for our community and for Durham County government. She has normally been serving as the deputy tax administrator, and when our tax administrator retired, Teresa stepped up to the plate in the middle of a revow to really be the interim tax administrator and just really did not miss a beat. We've had a very successful reval, and everything has just gone so smoothly. We are just so grateful to you, Teresa, for all of your hard work and to your service to Durham County government and to our entire community. Some of this data related to the work that she's been involved with, 85% of Durham County's tax base consists of real property. And when you do a reval, you have to estimate to the best of your ability what the market value is of, for Durham, it's on January 1st, 2019, 117,000 parcels. And Teresa and her staff actually went out and physically visited every single one of those properties. And with this year's process, there were 5,600 appeals to the appraised values, which was a 20% decrease from the 2016 reappraisal process. So Teresa, we really just want to express our gratitude and just say thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Chairman Jacobs, Commissioners, Mr. Manager, and Attorney Seiler. I really appreciate the recognition. I'm joined here by a couple of our fine tax office employees, Ms. Purdy and Ms. Williams, who are with the business personal property section. So unfortunately, most of our staff could not be here tonight. We have a few hundred appeals to work on, and this is the last week of the fiscal year, so we're trying to make sure that that collection rate is up to Durham County standards. So we are incredibly fortunate to have a board and managers who recognize employees, who support employees, and we really appreciate all the support that you've given our office, given me over the last few months. It really shows the character of this board, the way you embraced our office and just helped out in any way you could, especially Ms. Claudia. I can't say enough about you. Thank you so much for all of your support. You know, on a previous occasion, I've heard you talk about promoting from within, and I am an example of that. I came to Durham County temporarily while I was completing my degree. Came to my interview on the wrong day, it was a day early, but they hired me anyway. That was 25 years ago. So I am, Durham County is home to me. This is what I've known. It's my second career, actually. But again, it grew to be home, and I've enjoyed working here. And I think I've got a few more years in me. So I'm going to stick around for a little while longer. Thank you so
Good.
much.
And just thank you.
I'm so honored here.
Well, I want to also give our board a chance to share any comments. Commissioner Reckow?
Well, Teresa, all I can say is you covered yourself with glory. To step in at the time that you did, such a critical time in the reval process, and perform so well, I was amazed because it was relatively quiet after we sent out the notices. I heard from less than a handful of taxpayers, but overall, good acceptance. And I actually got compliments. I had people say that our tax office was answering the questions, taking the time, was very patient with taxpayers who had concerns. That means so much. So you knocked it out of the park, and I hope you're taking a nice vacation this summer. You deserve it.
I am.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Howerton?
Teresa, I just want to say that, you know, I didn't expect anything less. You have always been the constant professional. You and your team has always been that. So I didn't expect anything less. So thank you for continuing to be the professional that you are and doing a great job.
So again, I didn't want to, no, Commissioner Carter, did you want to?
Oh, well, I wasn't really
Okay.
vying for the floor, but I
Yeah.
would just say I cannot imagine anyone doing a better job than Teresa's done in the interim. And I'm sure that's partly because she had great staff supporting and helping out as well. Anyway, thank you.
Can't say enough about my staff. They've supported me every step of the way, been behind me. Incredible group of people there. I certainly am proud of.
You have a great spirit.
Hill?
Teresa, I want to thank you for what you did for us. When Durham County needed you the most, you stepped into the fray. I want to thank you for that. Also, you are a testament to Durham County employees. Like you said, I'm going to piggyback off of what you said. I love it when people are promoted from within. That speaks volumes of who we have here in Durham County. Our workers make this county run. They do the hard work, not the people behind the desk. And I want to thank you and your staff for everything you do to make this county a great place. Thank you.
And Teresa, I'm glad that you are going to get a well-needed vacation. So on July 1st is when our new tax administrator starts. And so Mr. Dwayne Brinson will be our new tax administrator. So this is your last week. Is that correct?
It is.
Yes.
And I
hope.
spoke with Dwayne yesterday.
Okay.
Excuse me, today, early today, on Friday. So
Right.
I'm ready for him to come, and
Yeah.
we're looking forward to it.
Right. Well, thank you. And if you could also stand too, we'd like to recognize both of you, and also just to stand and recognize. Okay, so we have a number of consent agenda items this evening. And I just want to see, it's kind of the end of the year, make sure we get all the contracts and everything in, about any kinds of questions people might have, or anything that, any item that anyone would like to pull.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a comment about 19-291. I've been in touch with Drew Cummings about it, and he was looking about making us.
Okay, so why don't we, I actually wanted to just make a comment about that one in conjunction with 19-0317. They both have to do with the urban ministries. Commissioner Carter.
Do we need to pull the budget ordinance in order to discuss
Yes.
some changes from our last work session?
Yes.
So that would be
Okay. So
19-0236.
19-0236. Okay. Any other comments or questions about any of the other items? Okay, so I will just first, let's just see if we can just address 19-0291 along with 19-0137, both related to urban ministries. So Commissioner Recco.
So you may remember that during the presentation on this item, I did raise the issue from our Stepping Up Committee that we have times when people are discharged from the jail. They need a place to assure that they can stay particularly in their occupation, and that there are times when Urban Ministries has had a policy of accepting people on a we asked for flexibility. I just thought it would be appropriate to put a proviso back on to provide them so much and apart. And Drew said he would address it. I just wanted it on the public record. I don't know if we could approve it with the understanding. Did you have any chance to work on that at all today?
Sheldon Mitchell, the executive director of Urban Ministries, is out of town right now, but I was in contact with him by email and I have a meeting set with him next week to talk about that and a couple of other issues that we have pending with them.
Okay.
I think you all could approve the contract, understanding that it would be modified as necessary
Okay.
to reflect this interest.
Wanted to have it on the public record.
And I guess I just wanted to add that, well, first of all, that with these two items, we will be funding over $400,000 for the homeless shelter this year, which I think is significant. And also, with 19-0317, I know it's reflected in the item's description that we want to make sure that there is programming related to the renovation of the cafe. But I would ask that come back to our board, actually, whatever your recommendations are that may impact the design, and to look at the data from the Nehemiah Christian Center that we've been funding, the day center, if they could also help inform what the design might be optimal for, based on that's been a day center for us. But also, when I looked really carefully at the data in the Urban Ministries report, and you looked at some of the data points where we're not meeting our goals related to, so for employment for people with children, our goal is 50%, and the shelter it's been like 33% or 36% for adults. So I think that it's really critical that we focus on the employment piece. And I actually even thought it was ironic in the letter that accompanies the agenda packet, it actually calls out that the types of jobs that we're attracting, and it refers to pharmaceutical jobs contributing to the problem of homelessness. But I think we need to turn that around and actually, to me, it really highlights the fact that there's a disconnect there, because actually a lot of those jobs, as we've seen with some of our recent incentives, is that a lot of these jobs are actually related to manufacturing. They hire people with a background. They have jobs for people with high school degrees or a certification. They pay really good wages. So there actually are a lot of good job opportunities with the new jobs that we're getting. And we really need to change that focus with our shelter and turn that around. So I'm really concerned that with this investment in the cafe that's what we're doing here.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if I could piggyback, I'm very glad you brought that point up and following up, because when we discussed this, I felt that if there was renovation was going to occur, that it should be viewed as a multi-purpose space that could be productively used. That perhaps room for computer stations along the wall and things could be included in the design. So I hope we will get a briefing on that.
And we certainly have computers that we could help with. Okay.
So we'll certainly bring back whatever agreements and conversations we've had with him about that particular allocation in this year's budget before anything goes further on that.
Okay, so I'm going to pull the 19-0236, and let's just move forward with approving the other ones first. So that's 19-0108 through 19-0331, with the exception of 19-0236, which has been pulled. And I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So those items are unanimously approved. And instead of moving this one item to the end of our agenda, because I know there are people here because of this item, I'm going to ask that we, with the board's consent, that we just address that now. So Commissioner Carter?
Well, so I guess we could have pulled it just because of the magnitude of this item, but that's not exactly why we pulled it. At our last budget work session, as you all know, we arrived at agreement as to what should be included in our budget ordinance, and then after the meeting, we had some additional discussions and felt like we wanted to increase the amount of money for Durham Public Schools by a bit. And so we need to decide if that indeed is going to happen.
And what is, do you have a proposal for that?
Well, what we talked about was, the manager was recommending $7 million additional funding over the last year, and we were, in the course, the Board of Education was asking for $8.25 million. We talked about the possibility of trying to go the whole way, didn't feel like we could get there, but wanted to add another $250,000. So it'd be $7.25 million additional funding for Durham Public.
So do I have, is that a motion for that?
Well, I'm not sure. Is that what we need to do here? I mean,
Well, Keith, you had given us two different possible scenarios, so.
Yes, ma'am. By definition, if you pass the ordinance that already, we have an ordinance prepared with $250,000 more for DPS for a total increase in funding of $7.25 million, you are, in effect, approving what you just brought up. I don't know. I'm not a legal expert. Didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. I just know that the ordinance is the thing, and the one in front of you includes $250,000 additional DPS, $7.25 million.
okay, very good. So we just need to
Just move to approve the ordinance.
Right, move to approve the ordinance.
And
So I would move to approve this ordinance, and if we want to discuss it further, feel free. But I would move that we approve this ordinance.
Second.
okay, so moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Hill to approve the budget ordinance with that designates $7.25 million for Durham Public Schools, in addition to all of the other things that we also added at our last budget meeting. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is unanimously approved. Okay, great. I didn't know if anybody, since we've just approved our budget, if anybody had any comments that they wanted to share related to our budget process. Commissioner Reckow?
Well, I just want to say that I felt that with this budget, we really were beginning to try to follow up on things that I think all five of us talked about in 2016 when we were campaigning for office. And that's increasing the opportunities for our young people. We are in a wonderful situation in Durham. We have attracted so many great employers. We have the highest wages in the state. And right now, 60% of our jobs are filled by people commuting in to Durham County. That's why the roads into our community are so congested in the mornings and in the late afternoons. So what we want to see is more of our young people ready for these. And I was really struck by a report that was issued about a week ago by the Department of Public Instruction, where they were asked by our General Assembly to look at areas where there's low wealth school districts, over 60% on. Fortunately, but high performing, so performing higher than the median for their state. And unfortunately, there aren't that many districts in our state or in the nation. But when Department of Public Instruction looked at those districts that were high performing, what was the secret ingredient? What was happening? They found a commonality in general, and it was that there was strong early childhood education. And I think that that says a lot, because this board has made a commitment to go to universal pre-K for our low-income young people, and eventually to, we're prioritizing low income, but we want to take it universal. And then maybe even to go to 3-year-olds for pre-kindergarten. And then we've developed looking at a continuum, prenatal all the way through age 8, which we've labeled Grown in Durham. So I'm pleased that in this budget, we are approving a coordinator for the early childhood continuum. We have a wealth of programs in Durham, but they're not always well coordinated. And also our citizens don't always know about them. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we are working, that we're rowing together, that we make a full court press, and that we give all of our little ones a great start in life. So I'm excited about that. Also excited about a coordinator for adverse childhood experiences. I see Joanne Pierce, our deputy director from the health department here. Joanne's been a wonderful mainstay of that task force. But this also is critical. Too many of our little ones in Durham start out life really with a tough situation. And what we want to do is address these needs as well as we can. And so we're going to have a coordinator for that, because we want to reduce child abuse in Durham. We've seen a real increase in that in the last few years, and really be preventive. So this is exciting stuff. I think we're on the right track, and I'm very pleased that we approved the budget.
Thank you. Commissioner Howerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So all the things that Commissioner Raquel said and others, now manager and staff brought us a great budget, and that I'm really proud of. A couple of things that I'm not so proud about. I think 500,000 added to our school budget would have been good rather than 250, but we did 250 instead. And I'm particularly also proud of the compensation study that we bring all of our employees up to market rate salaries, that we as county elected officials do not need to add to the poverty level by not taking care of our employees. So I'm very proud of that that's in the budget. We've got a lot of things to take care of and support in this budget, and I'm proud of it. There are some other things that could happen, Universal pre-K is so important to us as a board and to this county. I went across the state in the past year talking about thriving, that all of our children thrive. And one of the things that the ways that they cannot thrive is that if parents are not thriving and making a decent living, or if they're not getting a decent education, and if they don't feel safe in their communities. And that has to do with our law enforcement and our sheriffs. So we have a lot of things that we can say that we're proud of in this budget. And there is a lot more work to do. And that means there's for all of us to do in this community, that we bring up, when we work to bring all of our children up and all of our citizens, then we lift the entire community. So I'm proud that we finally got to this point with this budget, and I'm looking forward to a vacation for a few days.
Commissioner Carter.
So I want to thank our manager for bringing us a budget that we practically approved as it was. We certainly discussed a lot of possible additions, deletions, but in the end, we added 250,000.
We added a few little.
Well, yeah, but mostly we went with it. And I also want to say how hard I thought this budget season was. Felt like the needs this year seemed deeper and more and very legitimate across the board, from every department, from the sheriff's office, from the Durham Public Schools, and from all of our departments. And so it was really hard not to be able to fund all of the requests, because they all seemed, I don't know the details of all the requests, but for example, I do think Durham Public Schools needs the full amount that the Board of Education was asking for, but I'm glad that we're coming close to that with $7.25 million. I think the current 2018-19 local funding, adjusted for inflation, is below pre-recession levels of 2008-9, and our new per pupil funding will be above that now. So that's good. We want to have rebounded from that, and I feel like we have. And I also want to say for Durham Public Schools, I think it's a really important point to make that we're increasing the amount of capital funding, the annual capital funding that we provide for the school district, because they need it so desperately. They're backlogged with capital needs and updates and such. And so we're increasing the amount of lottery funds, and also we're giving a limited obligation bond of $10 million over 3 years, which will boost the annual funding, at least for those 3 years, to close to $6 million, up from about 1.37. So that's positive. I'm also very excited that I think our budget is making greater investments in programs, and even more so into systems that promote children's health and development and their school success, and some other system and program efforts that hopefully will really impact family financial stability. I'm very excited about the expansion of our preschool. I just think we've been working on that for a decade, and we're really making strides there now. I'm excited that we're, as Ellen said, investing in this early childhood systems coordinator. That's going to be a hard role. And I look forward to learning more about exactly what the expectations are for that position. But, I know it's going to be difficult. We're hoping to create some sort of civic architecture for how to work across organizations and just different sectors to provide all the services in a continuous fashion that our children need, with no gaps in services, and we will enhance them where we need to. And I'm thrilled about the ACES coordinator. I know that Durham Public Schools for a while now has been, aware of the importance of adverse childhood experiences and the impact on student success and the impact on behavior and trauma-informed schools. And that's just one of the systems that I know is part of this ACES task force that the coordinator is going to be providing staff time for. So I think that's fantastic. We also have this workforce development plan that we're hoping to have fleshed out a little bit more through our contract with Made in Durham. We were putting some extra money in there, and then of course the aging plan. So we are trying to have the whole cradle to career continuum, but we're focusing in on this early childhood spread from 0 to 8. I'm thrilled also that we are hiring an HIV navigator. That's a new position so that we can join the fast track cities. I don't remember the official name, but basically the goal is to eliminate HIV. And our rate in Durham is much too high, and it can be eliminated. And so we're moving and we're taking some steps to do that. I'm thrilled we're having this racial equity officer position. That's going to hopefully really move our work in that realm forward and help keep us focused in our policymaking work on looking at all of the racial equity impacts of our decision making. And I could go on, but I'll stop and just am grateful to our staff for taking us, through this process that was complicated, difficult, challenging, and I feel like we have a pretty solid outcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Hill?
Well, what else can I say? My colleagues have spoken quite eloquently about the things we're trying to do to make sure that Durham children have great outcomes. And the things that we do from pre-K through their graduation in high school, making sure that they are ready to read by 3rd grade, making sure that they have all the tools that we can give them to move forward and have the best life, a life of dignity. I think that's highly important. The only thing I will say I'm a bit surprised to hear is the $500,000 that my colleague suggested. I'd like to amend the budget, even if there's a tax increase. If my colleagues are so inclined to go to $500,000. I wonder if I have any support there.
I mean, I would do that, but the interesting thing is, hearing one commissioner bring this up tonight is we pretty much agreed we didn't want to do that at our work session, so it was a surprise. Hear the possibility that maybe there would be support for that.
Well, we don't want to go down this road, Heidi. We had conversations on the phone, and we did not discuss this here. So let's not start pointing fingers, okay?
Pointing fingers.
No.
I'm just supporting
Yes, you
James.
did. Yes, you started. So don't
On your lead.
you don't want to go there.
Well, let's go to $500,000.
Well, I think it has to be a conversation that has to be had.
That's what we're doing now.
I mean, it's fine with me.
Okay. Keith?
I think you have to have a conversation with your.
I think the issue is that what we did before was we were able to fund out of fund balance, so then we would be looking at it. This budget does include a 2.3 cent tax increase, so
To be clear,
would
you're
be-
asking for an additional $250,000 to go up to $500,000.
That would take us to what, a 2.41?
it's,
There are many different revenue sources in a $500 million budget. $250,000, not to sound crass, but in my world, it's not a tremendous amount of money to find. I would probably stress to see if we could do that, even if it is fund balance. It's a relatively easy amount to appropriate. Having said that, I can go back and do some math for us and say 1 cent on the tax rate is 4.3 million, so 250,000 is less than, it's half of 1/10 of a cent on the tax rate.
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
0.06.
And
I mean, we can do that. I would just have to do the math.
yeah,
And
well,
we could approve that.
right.
You give me a few minutes.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, personally, I don't think it's appropriate to make a decision on the fly when our staff hasn't analyzed it, and we have, again, many other, I think we have prioritized the school spending in our budget, and that we know that there are many, many things that we have not funded in this budget. I personally don't feel comfortable asking staff to do this kind of work without, just like this. I don't,
Okay.
yeah. Commissioner Recco?
Talking about our staff, I just want to add a note. From the manager on down, our staff has supported this process with a tremendous level of effort. Keith Lane and his staff do a yeoman's job all year, but during the month that we review the budget, you step up. And I find it amazing. I may send a few questions, let's say at 10 o'clock at night. I'm looking over sometimes over my coffee in the morning, and there's already, and I'm thinking, they must work 24/7. So really great job, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith.
So I didn't want to cut you off. Did you
No,
have any
no.
other comments
No,
that
that's
you
fine.
wanted to make?
No, I think we can continue this conversation further, but yeah, if,
I think unfortunately, if Commissioner Howerton had wanted to bring forward that suggestion, it would have been appropriate to have brought it forward at an earlier time. So I have comments that I would.
It was discussed, Wendy. You proposed the 250.
We discussed that at our last budget work session, and
No.
that's a discussion we had at our
This was
last.
a conversation over the phone.
No, it was based on a conversation at our last budget work session. It was a follow-up to discussion at the budget work session. Okay, well, I'm going to share my comments after everybody else, and I do want to thank the manager for, as Commissioner Carter mentioned, he heard us loud and clear that we wanted to prioritize funding for education and for Durham Public Schools, and that was the priority of this budget. I'm very proud of the Durham County fiscal year 1920 budget. It is a reflection of the priorities that we have heard from our community and our staff, and is aligned with Durham County's strategic plan goals and our board and identified priorities. We had many tough choices to make, as there are many great and justified funding needs in our community. We have to make decisions that leverage strategic use of our limited public resources in our efforts to ensure that all people are thriving in our community. Education and our children are prioritized in this budget. Education is the most important factor impacting life outcomes, and our children are our most vulnerable and precious resource. When we invest in our children, we are investing in our future. About a third of the county's general fund budget is for education. This budget allocates nearly $146 million for Durham Public Schools, an increase of $7.25 million over last year's funding. In addition, we are supporting DPS with more than $5.4 million in direct funding for school resource officers and school health services, and $134,000 to support the Bull City Community Schools initiative. In this budget, Durham County government is further supporting DPS, our children and our families, with our increased commitment to early childhood education, which you've heard a lot of comments about. Research continues to prove that this investment is critical for positive life outcomes. We are increasing our funding for the Durham Pre-K program dedicated to universal access for all children in Durham to $5.1 million. Also in this budget, an ACES, Adverse Childhood Experiences Coordinator, an early childhood coordinator, and support for evidence-based programs such as Wash and Learn and Reach Out and Read that create the foundation for literacy. Our board is increasing our investments in youth and workforce development with funding for Made in Durham's efforts to promote work-based learning, more than $1.4 million in scholarships for all Durham high school graduates who attend Durham Tech, new STEAM and teen library programming at our renovated main library, Durham Tech's new culinary arts program at American Tobacco campus, and increased support for kids voting, civics education in Durham Public Schools. This budget is also a reflection of our ongoing efforts to invest in and address the critical needs of all people in our community. A racial equity officer to help us ensure that Durham County programs, services, and policies are addressing and promoting racial equity. More than $4.8 million in funding for programs to help keep our residents out of our criminal justice system and support in reentering our community. In this budget, the county is taking on local funding of formerly grant-supported positions within our phenomenal Bull City United Violence Interruption Program, our formerly incarcerated Transitions Fit Health Program, our Project Build Gang Reduction Program, and our Reentry Council, which helps support returning residents with housing, jobs, and health needs. In this budget, the county is addressing the needs of our most vulnerable residents. A 50% increase in funding for our Durham Center for Senior Life to help with adult daycare and health, the doubling of eviction diversion emergency funding, increased child welfare positions to support our families and children in crisis, and capital funding for our groundbreaking affordable housing projects at 300 and 500 East Main Street. Our board also continues our commitments to sustainable wages for all residents, including Durham County employees, with an allocation of $3.1 million to complete the compensation recommendations implemented for public safety employees last year. But our board is also committed to ensuring that this is implemented in an equitable and fair way for our low salary and below market rate identified staff. Finally, I want to acknowledge our incredible budget staff who went above and beyond during our more than 27 hours of budget work sessions. Keith Lane, our budget director, David Aides, assistant budget director, all of the budget staff. Can you all just stand up? Yay! Okay. Yeah, really. Susan Teaseye, our finance director. Susan, stand up. Our general manager, Claudia Hager, please stand up. And every single department head or staff person that presented during our budget hearings, can you all please stand up? Come on. You too, Curtis. You were, come on. I see not everybody is standing up. People are being very modest, okay? Thank you for all the expertise and information you provided so that we could make the most well-informed decisions possible. I also want to thank all of the Durham residents for the invaluable input you provided to us that also greatly informed our decision-making during the budget process through your emails, online comments, phone calls, face-to-face meetings, and comments at our public hearings. To our beloved Durham community, I hope that you will find the Durham County budget the most readable ever and feel like you can read each department's page and understand where and how your public dollars are being spent. And most importantly, too, I hope you will find parts of this budget that you are really excited about. Lastly, I want to acknowledge that this budget represents a 2.3-cent in property tax increase over our revenue neutral rate of 68.92 cents for a new rate of 71.22 cents. Last year's tax rate was 77.79 cents, so this will be a 6.57 cent tax decrease from last year, with only about $9.2 million in new tax revenue this year and more than $40 million in requests for this new revenue from 27 county departments and Durham Public Schools. It is very difficult to address the needs of our community and balance the impact that increasing market values in downtown neighborhoods are having on long-time, low-income, and fixed-income residents. Yes, Durham County's budget is a moral document. I believe that the budget our board has approved tonight prioritizes strategic investments in the incredible work that happens each and every day in Durham County government, in partnership with Durham Public Schools, Durham Tech, Durham City Government, nonprofits, and so many other community partners as we work together to tirelessly ensure that Durham's vitality is built upon the health of our residents and the capacity of our community to foster and enhance the well-being of every citizen. Thank you. So we will move on to a public hearing tonight for Rougemont Commercial. We have continued this public hearing from several weeks ago. And yes, I encourage people to not stay for the rest of our meeting. I encourage people to leave, especially those people that sat through 27 hours of budget work sessions.
Thank you, man. Okay.
So, thank you. So, thank you so much for being here today, and I'm forgetting your name because I would say it.
Certainly. Good evening. I'm Emily Struthers.
Okay, Emily. I apologize, Emily.
It's only my second time.
So thank you, and thank you for the revisions to the report and for including information about the Rougemont Village plan and all that. So I would just open up you to add anything you want, and then any other questions or comments from our board members, and then we have some people signed up to speak.
Thank you. I will sort of continue to summarize what you had just stated, but I want to go through some of those items. So as you said, case Z18-00037, Rougemont Commercial, was continued from the May 28th hearing. At that time, a request was made for additional information on the Village of Rougemont plan as it relates to this rezoning. That information, which outlined that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the plan as implemented through future land use map amendments and a UDO text amendment, has been provided as part of your agenda packet. Additionally, commissioners raised concerns at the May 28th hearing on this item regarding pedestrian connectivity within the area of the proposed Rougemont commercial site. While the Unified Development Ordinance specifies that pedestrian facilities, including sidewalks, are not required in the rural tier, staff has spoken with partner departments regarding potential avenues of addressing commissioners' concerns regarding pedestrian connectivity on site or in the vicinity of the proposed development. Jason Watson stated that NCDOT could accept appropriately designed sidewalk in NCDOT right-of-way, but since they would not maintain any sidewalk, the county or the property owner would be responsible for maintenance of that sidewalk in perpetuity. Additionally, from the Durham County Open Space and Real Estate Division, Les Burns identified that the Durham Timberlake Rail Trail is planned but not currently active. Since the owner is not presently interested in selling, this rail trail is identified on the Durham Trails and Greenways Master Plan in the area northeast of and approximately parallel to North Roxborough Road. However, this is not an active trail system project, and it could be a decade or so longer before any proffered or donated funds towards that trail could be used for actual trails development. In addition, that trail doesn't offer direct replacement for the sidewalks within the Rougemont Village commercial area. So with those avenues presented, I do want to have us keep in mind that the only commitments that can be made on a text-only development plan, which is the type of development plan application we have in front of us today, are those specific to use. If the county commissioners wish to further explore any of these options, any discussion of sidewalk requirements, maintenance agreements, or contributions to trail systems would be done directly with the developer or applicant and separately from this rezoning request, and they would be strictly voluntary on part of the applicant. Staff is available for any questions on this case, 18-00037 Rougemont. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Emily? Commissioner Carter?
That was super helpful. Thanks for laying that all out for us, the additional information that you've provided. With a text-only development, calling it right?
A text-only development plan, yes.
Development plan, yes. With the text-only development plan, would there ever be in the future, I know not now, but in the future, any opportunity to allow for, optional commitments, like sidewalks, for example?
So my understanding is that that's an avenue the planning department is considering. I don't believe there's any current revisions that would allow that, but I know it's certainly on our page of things that have come up and things that could potentially in the future.
Maybe in the future. Just interesting, Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments? I didn't see our chair leave. All right.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, I have two people who are signed up to speak. Mr. Brent Purdom and Russell Markham. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue. Okay.
You're all right.
Okay. Brent? Brent, if you would please state your name and address.
Or Barrett Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm here again on behalf of Glandon Forest Equity, who's the applicant. Just, what Emily did, everything that she's explained a little bit better, more advanced than last time we were here. But I'm here again just in case you guys have any other questions that I can answer, because they've already done a great job of explaining everything.
Thank you, Brent. No, just.
Okay, and does anyone have any questions for Brent? Anyone? Okay. Russell Markham? If you please just state your address, name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Russell Markham. My wife and I, we reside at 12912 Roxborough Road, just across the Highway 501 from the subject property. And at the last meeting, we discussed various things, but we want to address that in the water issue, with the Dollar General being a commercial business, that would have an adverse effect on the 2 wells that are in place for Rougemont. There was 41 houses in the beginning along with 41 houses and businesses combined, just a few businesses that were implemented on the new well system. And I've talked with a county representative today who confirmed that the 2 wells that are in place would not be adequate to support a commercial business in addition to the homes and businesses that are already in operation. And we also discussed how the wells have to be permitted by the state of North Carolina. And the people in the waterworks have submitted a amendment to the state, but the state has not approved new wells. So, the Dollar General is not the best quality business. It will not have a substantial tax base, and the citizens of Rougemont are looking for better quality commercial development. And I've talked with some of the residents, and the majority of the residents would like to see a place to eat, a restaurant. And so the development would not be the best development for Rougemont. And a lot of the citizens in Rougemont have not forgotten their desire to incorporate. And so it's been about 8 years since they went before the General Assembly to incorporate Rougemont. And so now we're going to be looking at doing that again. And the citizens of Rougemont would like to make their own decisions about the commercial growth. And in the long run, it will benefit the county of Durham. The tax base will grow more substantially with a quality of growth that will complement not only Rougemont but the county of Durham and commend the state of North Carolina.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Rector.
I appreciate your comments. Did you actually get together? Has there been a community meeting about this development in terms of your final comments, expression of concern by the broader Rougemont community?
I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Your final comments where you're expressing concern about the proposal. Did you have a community meeting where this was discussed? And are you representing the opinions of, can you characterize how many people share the opinion that you just expressed?
We haven't had a formal meeting with the Ruritan Club, but we have had smaller meetings among the community. And we will be meeting with the Ruritan Club leaders in regards to this matter, as well as looking at reopening the desire to incorporate and submit another application to the North Carolina General Assembly. And
what's the basis of that? What's leading people to talk about doing that?
I didn't hear all of the question.
What is leading people to decide they want to incorporate again? What specifically?
Well, we're new to the community. We haven't lived there that long, but the leaders of the Ruritan Club that were pushing for the incorporation with the state never lost that desire. Now, everything didn't come together, and I don't think they had all the support that they were looking for, but there will be more people working with them to work towards the incorporation. And the cost of the infrastructure to support the Dollar General in regards to the water is not worth it. And it could possibly lead to the county considering an increase in taxes to support the new wells for commercial businesses like the Dollar General. And we would like to see quality businesses that would have a more substantial tax base and that would be more needed or more by the citizens of Ridgemont. There's a Dollar General no more than 5 miles north in Roxboro, Person County. Actually, it's not in the Roxboro city limits. It's more in the Timberlake area. And it's really not needed. Other commercial businesses are needed that would be a much better use to the community.
Thank you.
As you know, Ridgemont is recognized by the federal government as a CDP, census designated place. And in 2010, the census showed about 978. Well, it's growing. And you can look at the real estate market as well as other factors that indicates growth. And Ridgemont is starting to exceed Bahamian growth. Zillow's reporting, I believe, 61 houses for sale in Ridgemont, but only 26 to 38 in Bahama. And Bahama grew very fast for many years, thanks to the Bahama Ruritan Club and the support of such. But now, Ridgemont, being on the Highway 501 main thoroughfare, is an ideal place to have a town centrally located between Durham and Roxboro. It'd be a good stopping place for people who are traveling through North Carolina, and it'll also be an area for when hotels are built for overflow whenever Durham has their conventions and so forth. And so Ridgemont is designated to grow. It's destined to grow. There's going to be a lot of growth in the future.
Mr. Markham, I hate to cut you up, but we actually only give people 3 minutes, and then Commissioner Reck, I was just asking you a follow-up question. But thank you so much for your comments. I mean, you have another question?
No, I want to ask the developer rep.
Okay, so thank you. And if anyone else has another question, we'll let you know. Okay. Mr. Purdom?
Yes, ma'am.
So, based on the comments that were just made, I want to follow up with a question to you. In the staff report, it indicates that at this time, a commercial connection to the county water system cannot be guaranteed as the county's state permit limits the amount of commercial development allowable to be connected to the system. This issue will need to be resolved prior to site plan approval through modification to the county's state permit for the water system. What have you done to assure that you will have a source of water?
Well, we talked to the county utilities about the water. And originally, it was permitted, I think, for like 5 or 6 or something commercial buildings, which all that was there in Ridgemont. And we were told we could go through the process with the state, just like you mentioned. But the use that we're looking at doing only does 200 gallons a day, which is a lot less than a residential property. So the capacity, I was told, is not an issue at all. We just have to get the state to amend the permit, which I was told would not be a big deal. Even if it is a big deal, we were also told we can put in our own well, own private well on that property. But like I said, with only 200 gallons a day, it doesn't take much water. It only has 2 bathrooms. There's no showers or anything like that.
And everyone's making reference to this site being used for a Dollar General. Is that in fact the plan? I mean, that isn't necessarily referenced in the staff.
I'm not at liberty to say. It's just, I'm just here for the rezoning.
All right, thank you.
I have some questions for staff. So first of all, there's our staff, I guess, too. This issue being raised about the water capacity in the process. I just wanted to know if there's any concerns about that.
Commissioner, at this time, there aren't any concerns regarding the water. Pat Young worked directly with Jay Gibson, our county engineer, and they discussed this extensively prior to this hearing. Logically, what the developer just stated is absolutely correct. A commercial use of this type would be a minimal amount of water consumption. We can name a lot of other types of commercial uses that would certainly use more water than this. So at this time, it's really not an issue for staff.
Okay. And to ask you, Emily and Pat, so was there a requirement to have any type of neighborhood meeting for this rezoning?
Since this rezoning did not require a future land use map amendment or a traffic impact analysis, it did not require a neighborhood meeting. If the proposal moves forward to a site plan with greater than 5,000 square feet of proposed commercial adjacent to residential, they would be required to hold a neighborhood meeting in accordance with the minor special use would be required for that.
Okay, so because this use is consistent with the designated land use that is in the Village of Rougemont land use, then it does not require a neighborhood meeting. Okay. I will, Pat, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chair Jacobs, I just want to quickly add to that some of the supplemental material that Emily and I provided you all. Just to take us back to 2012 and 2013, we had 6 community meetings. It was between 25 and 70 Rougemont residents at each meeting. Really, the number one concern we heard was allowing for and facilitating more commercial uses in exactly this area. So I think we feel, as I tried to state last time and restate tonight, that this is directly consistent with the vision and intent of that process. Now, that has been 5 years since it was adopted.
Right.
I just wanted to reiterate that on the record.
So it was very interesting to go back and read the document from March 24th, 2014, and to see that the preference from residents was the priority was for rural service centers. And actually, that people did not want to move forward with the more specific design guidelines, and also did not want the design guidelines, and they also did not want the historic rural village designation. Is that correct?
That is correct. So what we heard was there wasn't an interest in the kind of regulation that you see with a historic district or a design district, but that there was interest in commercial uses that were more concentrated in a nodal fashion there at Roxborough and Red Mountain. So what we suggested and what was approved by the commissioners in 2014 was the future land use designation was changed from a more strip pattern along Red Mountain to a more nodal pattern that would support a village concept. Now, also needed, of course, are water sewer utilities for that to be significantly successful. And as you've heard tonight, the water capacity is limited, but would not be adversely impacted by the proposed use.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I would just say, I mean, to Mr. Markham, I hear what you're saying, but I think that unfortunately we haven't had recent meetings. And we've actually heard at least from one resident who does support the project. And we're hearing from you as somebody who doesn't support it, but you're the only 2 people that we've heard directly from. But that when this whole designation took place to allow more commercial development, this rezoning allows for actually 20 more acres of commercial land use at this particular intersection. And I reread the report from it that people, there was minimal interest in having some of the stricter guidelines that would address some of the issues that you're concerned about. At this point, I just want to note that. Is there, Pat, was there anything left as follow-up to this that we would revisit at any point in time to revisit the design guidelines or the scenic rural village or some of those more restrictive? Was there anything left with that, or?
There wasn't at the time of that engagement in 2012, 2013. There didn't seem to be insufficient interest to revisit that. The key issue, one of the key issues for follow-up that came out of that was looking at transit options, which there was a lot of interest in. And as you've alluded to in a recent meeting, that helped lead to some programming that's underway to look at the best way to serve the Rougemont community with transit options, whether that's paratransit or a bus service or an express bus or some other means. So that was the only real follow-up item that have indeed followed up on and is actively underway in terms of.
Well, related to that, the Planning Commission comments, which were outstanding, as well as the BPAC comments, one of the things that was recommended by BPAC was to allow for a future bike lane. And I mean, I understand the sidewalk issue is that the county does not, we don't have sidewalks in the unincorporated area because the NCDOT is the one who has authority or maintains those roads, and they don't maintain sidewalks, and the county doesn't build or maintain sidewalks. So that's an issue. But in terms of allowing for a bike lane, I mean, that really seems to make sense, especially if we're going to have future transit out in Rougemont, and also future, maybe bike lane. I mean, that's in future plans. So how can we try to accommodate that?
So there's no road work associate required with this proposal. So there would be no transportation impact analysis, which is the tool that's typically used to bind an applicant to improvements such as bike lanes. If the warrants are met, if it's determined at the time of site plan that a turn lane or other improvements are needed, then at that time we could request a right-of-way dedication to accommodate a bike lane. But we typically, with a use of the kind that's been described, a retail use such as a Dollar General or a similar use, doesn't typically meet the warrants to require those types of improvements and therefore warrant requiring dedicated right-of-way. Right-of-way could be dedicated at the time of site plan, but this text-only development plan, we don't have a tool to legally bind at this time the applicant to committing additional right-of-way.
Madam Chair, it also isn't a large enough use, if it's taking up at least a full city block or more, but the modest amount.
Makes sense.
It really any.
And I just have a question about this text-only plan amendment that we approved recently. My understanding was that we were trying, that the purpose of a text-only plan amendment was really in those cases where it really just didn't make sense for somebody to have the expense. It was kind of a no-brainer kind of thing where, we didn't want to put undue burden on residents. But I don't feel like this is that kind of situation. And I don't feel like this is what was meant to be the result of a text-only plan amendment. So what happened?
Sure. So I think you characterized it well. The intent that we got from Planning Commission, City Council, and from you all was to create an option where, as you described, our site-specific development standards are strong enough to give a fair amount of certainty about what's going to be developed on the site. So that all that really needs to be handled through the development plan process is use limitations. Going this route would definitely save the applicant in the range of $20,000 to $40,000 minimum. And so for many developers, I can't speak to the circumstances of the specific applicant tonight, but for small developers, low moderate income entrepreneurs, very consequential. It could be the difference between a successful project or not. The only tool we have to really ascertain when it's appropriate to use the text-only tool versus the full development plan is if there's some kind of significant issue that we as staff see that is not addressed, that cannot be addressed through the text-only tool. We didn't see that in this case. We feel like the site development standards for a small retail site are strong, clear, relatively definitive, and therefore didn't feel like there was a evident public policy need to have those additional commitments. Certainly you all in your role by far have that authority to decide through your action on this tonight whether or not you think the applicant needs to go back and complete a full development plan.
Well, I mean, to be honest, and we don't know what is going to be built on this site. We have to look at what the approved land use is and whether this the rezoning actually conforms to what has been approved in the Rougemont Rural Plan. I mean, and it is consistent to allow a small commercial development on this site without knowing anything else. And we don't normally make decisions based on what we don't know. So I think that's the situation that we're in. Although I can understand what your feeling might be if it is a Dollar General. Some people might want it, some people might not. So I think that's the conundrum that we're at really. Commissioner Recco.
But, I'm glad we waited 1 month because the background information provided by the planning department is helpful. And the truth is, the citizens in Rougemont talked about the need for greater access to commercial and did want to be able to buy things conveniently than having to drive almost into this really close into the city of Durham. So I think that this store satisfies that. And at this point, I really don't know as we have a major reason to vote against. Obviously, there were some concerns expressed by the Planning Commission, but in the end, they did vote to support. So, and I think a good point is made. If the water is an issue, a commercial use that isn't a restaurant does water. Good. Use.
Any other comments from commissioners? Questions? Commissioner Hill, look like you want to say something.
Move for approval.
So we have statement. Did you move for the statement of consent?
Well, I guess we have the, and
Sorry.
yeah. And I just want to say also, I go back to what is in the 2014 plan where there were many, many meetings with residents, and clearly a preference was stated for service, having access to services and goods, and not wanting to actually get into the design guidelines and things that would have addressed some of the concerns that you have now. But that was what was expressed by the community at that time, and that's what we have to go by at this point. So we have.
So I move that we adopt the UDO zoning map change consistency statement. Is that good enough?
Yeah, well, It's adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 150A-.
I move that we adopt the consistency statement that's attachment 11.
Okay, do we vote on these separately? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Carter. And Commissioner Hill, second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the consistency statement is unanimously approved.
Then I move that we adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of the commercial neighborhood CN, residential suburban 10, RS 10, and Lake Mickey Little River District B watershed overlay zoning district, establishing the same as commercial neighborhood with a only development, and Lake Mickey Little River District B watershed overlays.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Howerton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the motion is unanimously approved. Okay, our next item of business is discussion approval of city-county response policy regarding encampments on public property.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to give a very brief introduction and then hand the over to my colleague, Hanalea Hoberman, who is homeless project manager in the City Department of Community Development. Some of you, this will be a little bit of a reminder when this was discussed in front of the Joint City-County Committee. This policy was developed in response to a number of highly visible long-term encampments on public property. Staff at both the city and the county realized we didn't have a great plan or organized process for dealing with it. Before you tonight is a policy that was developed input from numerous homeless service providers. It has been revised during and between 3 successive meetings of the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, and also was reviewed by the Coalition for Affordable Housing Near Transit. It was very well received at the May Joint City-County Committee meeting and is before you tonight for final consideration and hopefully adopt. And with that, I'll hand the mic and the floor over to Hanalea.
Thank you. As Drew introduced me, my name is Hanalea Hoberman. I work for the city in the Community Development Department. I serve as staff to the homeless system for the city and county of Durham and in our capacity as COC lead agency for the continuum of care. So I want to just go over the specifics that are in the policy as it stands to lay out how we would actually respond to encampments, when would an encampment qualify for the process, and what the guiding principles of the policy are. So the first important thing to know about this policy is that it is specific to encampments on public property. It has provisions for encampments on city property, county property, and as well as state-owned property. And that each response has a set number of responsible parties who would be tasked with coming to the table and have specific responsibilities in both assessing the encampment and then developing a response plan and carrying out that response. And who those responsible parties are depends on who owns the land and also where the land is located. So it's very important to note that this policy is not intended to enact a response protocol for all encampments on public property. This is specifically to address those encampments that create such substantial challenges for public safety and public health that it merits this type of response. And so this would only proceed at the request of the city manager's office or the county manager's office in response to specific challenges that have been raised in those areas. So in light of that, we developed a set of guiding principles that are the overarching principles for this policy and really are intended not just to guide our response to these specifically challenging encampments, but to set out a set of guiding principles for how our community wants to be addressing the experience of unsheltered homelessness in general in our community. So the first tenet is that all people deserve a safe and healthy place to live. The second tenet is that Durham values the quality of life of all of its residents, regardless of sleeping location, that folks should be offered a viable housing option that is low barrier and honors housing first principles and meets their individual needs. So this is really important because what we're saying here is that if we are addressing an encampment and we say that we have offered someone a housing option, they have not taken it, it's our responsibility to really think about what is a housing option that's going to work for that individual given their existing circumstances in life, and that's what we consider a viable housing option for that individual. And then finally, we recognize that even with significant engagement and the offer of a viable housing option, not everyone will accept. Some people will continue to live in an unsheltered situation even when they are offered housing. So that really guides our response then in understanding these very challenging encampments. So the last two guiding principles in the policy are that an encampment response shouldn't be unilateral. We don't want a one-size-fits-all response plan, but rather we should assess the characteristics of a given encampment and its residents and develop a timeline that meets those folks' needs. So some folks may be ready for housing now. Some folks may need additional time just to engage them and get them to the place where they're interested in housing. And so a time frame, whenever possible, should really incorporate considerations of those types of characteristics of the people living in an encampment, as well as to consider the immediacy of need for the safety and health risks that the encampment poses. And then finally, as we discussed, that decisions to vacate an encampment really should be reserved for those most extreme situations in which an encampment has a negative impact on public health, safety, or mobility. So the encampment response approach that is laid out in this policy is essentially prevention, which is to make sure that our services that we have them in our homeless system meet the needs of those folks who are unsheltered, who are often the folks who are most in need, who have the most barriers to housing, and who have the most challenges to deal with and to be successful in mainstream services. So prevention is about making sure that our services meet their needs and not that we expect them to necessarily change to be able to be successful in our services. And along with that is to reduce barriers to housing people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, so that we're really preventing the need for these types of responses by making our services accessible. And then, of course, there is the response plan that I will go over. And then the third piece is mitigation, which is to say that once the county manager's office has determined that encampment is so problematic as to warrant this type of response and a vacate has proceeded, that this location would need mitigation and site management to make it less attractive for rehabilitation, because we would not want to go through the entire process again because the site had been considered so detrimental to the public. So this entire response plan really is carved around the idea of the creation of an encampment lead agency, which is to be built into a role that will be funded by the city with an RFP issued in the fall to serve as the coordinating agency for our response as a community to unsheltered homelessness. And within that role, to serve as the encampment lead agency, as it's laid out in the plan, to convene the responsible parties, to convene them in their assessment, and then to actually coordinate the response as it's laid out in the policy. So this is a very detailed map that lays out everything that it takes just to get to the point where a resolution plan will be developed. So this is everything up to that point. So in very broad terms, of course, the city or county manager would ask the encampment lead agency to initiate a response. They would convene those responsible parties based on the location and property ownership. And then they would carry out an assessment of the different characteristics that are important to both consider how long it's needed to respond to the encampment and also whether the encampment warrants this type of response. So things like impediments to public mobility, threats to health and safety, but also the time needed to rehouse the individuals and how much other citizens are engaged with the encampment. Based on the assessment, the parties will reconvene and make a recommendation regarding whether a resolution plan is warranted. And then based on that plan, the city or county manager's office would make a decision as to whether to proceed with a response plan. So this lays out the actual response protocol. So once the point had been reached that a response plan was going to proceed, a response plan would be developed of no less than 60 days before the disbandment was to proceed. We anticipate that in most cases, a timeline of 90 days would be most appropriate. It's important to highlight here that we would be very happy to be housing folks on a faster timeline than 60 or 90 days. However, because of the challenges with housing, but also because of the significant time that's needed to just build trust with folks and get them accustomed and acclimated to the idea of being housed, that time is often needed. So it's sort of a maximum time, not that we're waiting to house folks if they're ready and something is available. Essentially, a list of the folks in the encampment would be developed. The encampment lead agency, along with Department of Social Services, would work to engage those folks and try to help them be housed. A notice of the disbandment would be posted at least 14 days before that was to proceed, along with verbal notices all along the way with the encampment lead agency. The city or county manager's office would be responsible for directing law enforcement to proceed with the disbandment of the encampment. And then after the fact, mitigation would occur with storage of individual belongings in a location accessible by public transit. And the notice would let them know where they could find their belongings. Wherever possible, we would be storing belongings together so that people could pick up their belongings together whenever possible. And then the site would be mitigated so that we could prevent rehabilitation. So one last thing to point out in this policy, there are provisions that specifically lay out if an encampment is designated as an obstruction or hazard encampment. That is to say that if an encampment is obstructing a right-of-way, is interfering with the basic functions of a public property, is presenting such a serious risk of injury or death that it must be responded to sooner, a response plan of less than 60 days could proceed in those types of emergent and very serious circumstances.
Well, that was that's my second time hearing this presentation, but outstanding presentation, Hanalea. And I again, just looking at all of the work that you and everyone else that you've been working with, all the partners, it's unbelievable. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, the flow chart related to the decision-making, I don't think I've ever seen such a detailed policy that was so thoughtfully done, and also that is incorporating so many different stakeholders and who's responsible for this and that. And so it's pretty amazing. So now I'm going to be wanting to know, how is it working? I guess, my question is, as we see, how does this really work? We had our one test case, right, that led to this, but what's going to be the process for kind of seeing how it's all working and then, reconfiguring?
Absolutely. So there actually are provisions in the policy for reporting back with progress reports from the encampment lead agency. And I'm trying to find those exactly in the policy so that I can explain them. Essentially, the encampment lead agency is responsible for giving a monthly report to my department at the city on plan progress, and it will be our responsibility to share those updates with the city or county manager as appropriate, depending on where that encampment is located and who owns it. And the encampment lead agency will work with us to prepare a progress report for the Homeless Services Advisory Committee at the midpoint of implementation, which was actually something specifically that was requested by the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. And there's no reason that that progress report could not also then be shared with this body or any other body that requested it. And then additionally, after the encampment is cleared, within 30 days of that taking place, the encampment lead agency is tasked with reconvening the responsible parties in that specific response and developing and conducting an assessment of the process as it stood, including who were the key players, what worked, what did not work, and actually providing recommendations for improvement, which they would provide to the city Department of Community Development, and then we would be responsible for providing that information to the Homeless Services Advisory Committee as appropriate if it was necessary to then consider amending the policy.
Oh, so you've got the continuous improvement built right in. Fantastic. Questions, Commissioner Howerton?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report. And forgive me, I'm not on the joint city-county planning, so when this showed up in my box, I just needed it explained so I know what I was voting for. So thank you for your explanation. So, and just trying to grasp, because this is the first time I've seen this, it's one of the questions that I have in reading through this, trying to grasp all of the information here, is so you will be hiring an outreach worker.
We actually plan to issue an RFP for a much broader set of responsibilities, essentially creating a role for the continuum of care for a coordinating agency to address the issue of unsheltered homelessness. It's likely that that will be more than one outreach worker. I would anticipate probably a team that involve both peer outreach and professional outreach working together, because that is considered best practices.
Okay, and I do agree we need to do whatever we can to assist people. So once you hire the outreach workers, so you're saying this is going to be more than one, is there a facility that you're working with, or, I mean, what happens? You go out and you work with people, do they, we have the homeless shelter. They do not want, sometimes people don't want to stay in the homeless shelter. So what is the facility that you will be working with? Or is it a facility?
So, you know, the homeless system is a kind of a complex network of providers, and it spans the range of shelter all the way to permanent supportive housing and everything in between, rapid rehousing. Yes. We have stuff that is, you know, we have connections with the Housing Authority, with Section 8 vouchers. We have a big range, and the work of the outreach staff is to connect folks to the appropriate housing option. And so that, as you've identified, that might not be shelter for everyone. We do, you know, have in this policy the work of lowering barriers to make shelter work better for folks so they don't turn it down. However, we know that some folks will still decline, and those folks still can be connected. And many of them could be at the very top of our priority list for permanent supportive housing. And what they really need is an advocate to steadfastly and reliably be with them, to build trust and walk them through that process. And so we do believe that that kind of steady work will reduce the need for this type of response, because people will be known on an ongoing basis to the unsheltered community, and building that trust and also helping them to connect to that permanent housing placement that really is, whether someone comes through shelter or comes through a street outreach worker, really is the end goal of any housing placement.
So I thought we had this process in place at one time. How is this different from what we already have?
One thing that I've observed, and this actually was more or less followed with the encampment that sort of started this all at the Chapel Hill Street interchange was that in practice, this is kind of the way that in most respects that our continuum responded and responds to homeless encampments. There's a lot of outreach already going on.
Right.
The outreach workers already know about this full range of housing options that are available and are already trying to connect the people in those encampments
Yes,
to
right.
services that they may need, housing that may be available, may meet their needs pretty well. I think the point of this was just acknowledging a real sensitivity around this issue of occasionally having to remove these encampments and wanting to make sure everybody was on the exact same page about how this work would proceed and making sure that the individuals in the encampment, if they did have to be disbanded, would be treated appropriately and in line with really the best community values that we have. So I don't know that we ever had a fixed policy, but I think our practice, which you probably have heard about over the years,
Yeah, I know we had
reflects most of this.
Yeah, I knew we had a practice. So what I'm hearing is the difference is that you're putting a policy in place to do it at this point.
And I think it improves further on what sort of historical practice, and it helps us again kind of remind us how to be our, reflect our best values in what we do.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We have an awesome rep to the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. So I know that she can share the updates with us when there is a report that you refer to. So, this is about encampments, which thank goodness is not something that we have all the time, hopefully. But
One
yeah.
strength, I think, of this policy and of the folks doing this work and of all the people that are sitting around that HSAC table is the guiding principles focusing on sort of the dignity of the people experiencing homelessness. I've been really impressed by that and how our staff and the city staff and people who are really looking at this closely keep that as a guiding principle.
I would say, just as an observation, I've been aware of one or two encampments over my time at the county that have been on county property. Mo in General Services reminded me of several more. So it'd be unusual that would be on county property, much more likely to be on city property or state property within the city limits. To put this kind of in the city's court for initiating action if that was going to happen, but not unheard of that it would become a county responsibility.
Any other questions? I guess one thing I noticed, Hanalei, was so there are very specific roles mentioned for social services, public health, city staff, county staff, but I didn't see anything specifically referring to nonprofits. Is that just an assumption, the role of the nonprofits, or that whoever's hired is going to be working with, because obviously the nonprofits are a huge part of meeting people's needs related to
Right.
this issue.
Beyond the obvious role of the encampment lead agency, we could hypothetically not be, but we assume would be a nonprofit that is already working in this space. The piece of this that is not seen because it's not part of the policy, but is essential to any success here is the work that we do already in our by name list meetings, in our coordinated entry processes of figuring out who should be prioritized for housing. That, of course, is not here because we already have policies in place for that. And that is really the essential place where the agencies that already do homeless service work in Durham would come in, because the encampment lead agency would be serving as the advocate for these specific set of clients in the existing meetings that we have to say, we have this many spots available, who is at the top of the list, what is their vulnerability, how long have they been homeless, what is additionally needed for their documentation. All of that work happens now. The problem is we often don't have someone to work specifically for these folks, because there are some assertive engagement folks, but it's a small team, and they have very, very specific eligibility criteria for the clients they can work with, and there are many folks who don't meet that eligibility criteria. So this would serve all those other folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
I have
Yes,
one,
Commissioner Howard.
one other question. So up until this point, this basically has been managed from Department of Social Services. Uh, is that not correct? I know we have the Homeless Services Committee. So this people that you're saying that you're hiring will be managed from the city. Is that correct?
The latter part of that is definitely correct. We have been bumping up the role of the Department of Social Services in kind of coordinated entry into the system. First for families, and now for everybody. But I think outreach to unsheltered homeless has really been more a strength of Housing for New Hope, Open Table Ministries.
A lot of the nonprofits.
Correct. And also to some degree, Alliance Behavioral Health also has teams that are frequently engaging with these. And they would continue to be involved in this, all of those parties.
So is this, I guess what I'm asking is this policy will direct all the nonprofits to be coordinated through the city? I'm just trying to figure out what's the direction here?
So I think it's important to understand that up until now, the piece that this policy really deals with, which is going to the encampments, assessing the effect of the encampment on public health, safety, and mobility, determining an appropriate response, and carrying out that response, has minimally been carried out by the type of homeless service provider agencies that you're speaking of. There, with the Highway 147 response, assertive engagement did play a part, as did Department of Social Services, specifically in the portion of this involved in outreach. There's a lot that goes into this beyond outreach. Obviously, assessments, many assessments are not appropriate for, a public health assessment is not necessarily most appropriate for those agencies, or the site mitigation, for instance, is not something a homeless service provider would carry out. A vacate is not. So there's many pieces of a response that really go beyond what a homeless service provider does. And the role of the encampment lead agency is as the convener, because they are being contracted to convene, and we do need someone to do that convening. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Department of Social Services has not previously served as the convener, that they had served specifically in the outreach capacity, and in this policy they would continue in partnership with the encampment lead agency to serve in that same outreach capacity, but we would essentially be contracting also a convener for all of these responsible parties.
Okay, for all of the agencies, you will be serving as convener.
Well, our contracted agency.
I would sort of anticipate the city won't be telling all the nonprofits what to do. There will be one contracted encampment lead agency, but the agencies that are already doing outreach, I think, will welcome this coordination. It seems much more likely to lead to positive outcomes for the people that they're working with than the previous environment. So I think they will be happy to work with this process because of that.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you so much again for this great work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is clearly something that you are really very knowledgeable about, very evident. So thank you so much. And thank you, Drew, for all of your work on this as well, the many hats that you wear. So,
and before we forget, this is something actually that we would
we need to
vote
approve. That's right.
Endorse the policy.
Absolutely.
I move that do you want us to endorse or approve?
Endorse.
I move that we, as the Board of County Commissioners, endorse the policy regarding encampment on public property as presented to us here tonight.
Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the policy is unanimously approved.
Thank you.
We have an update on the Northern Durham Convenience Site project. So we have Motrio, Bureau, am I saying that? No. Close.
God didn't ask me to pronounce it for you.
Okay. Our General Services Director, Chrissy, our Solid Waste Manager, Darius, our Waste Reduction Supervisor, and who else do we have with us?
Jeffrey Murray, Senior Project Manager with HDR.
Okay. Thank you for all being here.
So Commissioners, we have a briefing for you with regards to the combined resources for both Bahama and Rougemont for consolidated site. And I'm going to turn this over to Chrissy Corey-Vui, Darius, and Jeffrey with regards to the presentation that they have worked so diligently to put together. I do want you to know that the real spearhead is probably at the end of this row. I think everybody in planning knows him by first name. He can walk in the planning department and his name pops up on the screens in the planning departments. We're very grateful for the efforts that staff has put in to produce for you what we're hoping to be the new consolidated site. I'll turn that over to staff.
Thanks, Mo. So I'll get us started first with a review of what we currently have and what our sites are looking like right now, and then I'll turn it over to Jeffrey, who will kind of take us through the process of getting us to where we would like to be in that area. So in our northern part of the county, we have two convenient sites. They're located in Bahama and Rougemont. At our Rougemont site, that is on leased property. We lease that from a private landowner. We're just about at the end of a 5-year lease, and starting July 1st, we'll be on a month-to-month lease with that landowner. It's a very small site, very compact. We don't have all the services at that site that we do at some of our other sites. There's not space to do yard waste collection. There's not space for our scrap metal recycling. Our other site up there is the Bahama site, and so that is right next to Mangum Elementary School, and that is leased from the Durham Public Schools. And Commissioner Carter, I think is the name on the lease.
Really?
Yep.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's weird.
Yeah, so
Probably out of date.
that's about a 10-year lease, so that the last time we signed it, it was, strongly encouraged that perhaps that could be the last time. So been working on that sort of exit strategy for that location as well. So our Bahama site is bigger than Rougemont. We do have the additional services of yard waste and scrap metal, but it does require multiple stops. So if I were to come, and that's really at all of our sites. So if I come and I have some recycling and I have my trash, first I have to stop and drop my trash, then I get back in my car, drive around, and then get to the recycling, and then I stop again and get out and dispose of the recycling. The other thing that happens with our congestion is, like, let's say I come to the convenience site and all I have is recycling, but I still have to get in line behind the folks dropping off their trash and wait for somebody to unload their pickup truck until I can finally get to the recycling. So there's some traffic congestion at both of our sites. So we have our materials, our garbage, our bulky waste. Those are things like, broken down furniture or do-it-yourself cleanup projects. We have our commingled recycling, waste oils at both sites, so that's cooking oil, motor oil, antifreeze. We collect at just Bahama, as I said, just the white goods, that's your refrigerators, dishwasher, washing machine, and that yard waste. And at each site, we see over 50,000 visitors per year, so a total of over 100,000. And again, a lot of those folks, though, that are at the Rougemont site go to both sites, since they have to go to Bahama for some of those services. So along with those numbers, so we're at 2,900 tons per year of MSW bulky, that's our fancy way of saying trash, bulky waste. That's both sites combined. We have 293 tons per year of yard waste that comes into Bahama. At both of our sites, we get about 600 tons of recyclables. And what we see is that there's just very little room for growth. Certainly not at Rougemont, where we don't even have space for our existing services, but even at Bahama, we have 13 large dumpsters at our Bahama site, and there's no room to put any more dumpsters. We're pretty much maxed out there. We have no separation of resident versus the hauler. So I mentioned some of the traffic congestion between just visitors coming in. But the same route that I would take to drop off my garbage and my recycling is the same route that our haulers come in when they come to remove the recycling containers or the garbage containers. So often our staff is having to kind of stop the traffic to get those larger vehicles in and out so that they can empty out our containers. Some of the safety concerns, well, that is certainly one of those safety concerns. We're also looking at the retaining wall. So those are the top pictures you can see at Rougemont. That's where, you drive up the hill and you can drop your trash over the side of the wall into the dumpster. But we're seeing the retaining wall is starting to fail a little bit there. And we keep trying to put up little barriers and people keep, for some reason, driving into them. So that's a concern that we have. The yard waste platform, so we don't have a nice little wall like that for our yard waste. With our yard waste, we just have the 2 dumpsters are set up, and we have some stairs and a platform. So people have to walk up the stairs, hauling their limbs and bags of leaves, and then dump it over the side. So that's one of the areas that we get the most complaints about from our residents when they talk about our convenient sites. And then the traffic, as I've mentioned, is an issue. The other is just the driveway conditions. So if yard waste is our first complaint, our second complaint would be the potholes. And I think, Chairman Jacobs, you've gotten a few emails about that at our Bahama site with just residents being frustrated with the potholes. But it is a graveled site, and we get, as we said, over 100,000 visitors and a lot of trucks coming in there and out with those heavy dumpsters. So we, maintain it as much as we can, but that's another concern that we have, which hopefully the future will fix for us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Sure. Thank you, Chrissy. We came on board late in the fall to assist the county with the assessment of their existing program and develop some analysis and recommendations based on best practices for development of a new combined site at a new location, which the county was making developments on for procurement of or purchase of a new property. We assessed the traffic at both, traffic and tonnage at both existing facilities, and with a combined facility, looking at a 25-year projection, with some moderate growth in the area. The Rougemont area growth is picking up, certainly Bahama growth. Again, not a little bit less than the city proper, but certainly there are some growth opportunities there for development. We want a facility to be able to sustain that growth and be viable for 25 to 30 years or longer. So looking at a 25-year projection, with some moderate growth, we believe that we'll have to be able to maintain a site that can serve up to 200,000 visitors per year. So it's about twice the size of what the 2 combined facilities now. So over a 25-year period, we're looking at about twice the amount of tons and people coming to visit and utilize the facility. Based on the information, we reviewed the existing collection data. The county actually conducted a survey of users coming to the facility to kind of get their wish list and how often they actually come to the facility. Some residents, believe it or not, come 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, they just like the atmosphere, they like the camaraderie and the discussions with county staff. But others may come weekly and just bring their trash and recycling. So it's quite a range of folks of the frequency of visits. But again, we had to accommodate that with our traffic projections and looking at what we want to do for facility layout to be able to handle and accommodate that traffic movement. Also looked at the number of hauls that the county, through their contracted operations and hauling, are doing with their existing operation, because their yard waste is loose, your recyclables are loose, your waste for the most part is loose, including the bulky waste. So there's some improvement upon that can reduce the traffic, the commercial traffic in and out of the facility. It also reduce costs and save costs long term for the facility. Our recommended program, in accordance with best management practices in North Carolina and other areas across the country with these convenience center sites, is compact the MSW, compact or pre-crush the bulky waste, and also the recyclables. The recyclables can be compacted. It doesn't impact their recyclable value. They still can get processed at Sunoco or at Recycle America. It doesn't hurt their value. But compacting those will reduce the amount of trips for the commercial hauler, and also certainly cut down on traffic to the site and other things. We wanted to separate the traffic as best we could. Again, keep the residents on one side of the operation with the commercial vehicles on the opposite side to minimize any kind of safety impacts or accidents. Another best management practice is to use back-end drop-off stalls. It'll take residents a little bit to get used to it. But if you think of backing into a parking spot, and then when you're pulling out, you're actually looking at oncoming traffic. It's a much safer operation, plus it puts your trunk or the rear bed of your truck closer to where you're dropping off material. So it's twofold improvement over the current kind of drive-through operation that's there now with the compacted waste and the bulky waste drop-off. And we also wanted to use the retaining wall as a guardrail to provide that safety mechanism for residents who are dropping off the materials into a hopper, actually use the concrete wall as the retaining wall. Did you have a?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to know, so in terms of the, oh, my thing just disappeared. In terms of what people are used to at the Bahama and the Rougemont site, it seems like some of the services are not going to be.
We're going to provide all the same services that is currently at Bahama.
Okay, because
Maybe a few more, and maybe a few more, because the site that we are proposing to move to will have the capacity to bring on, for example, a shredder and be able to park a shredder there to have a shredder experience for the community. So they'll be able to offer more services, especially based on the way this facility is designed, if we're able to acquire the land and actually do the construction that's being proposed.
Yes, in looking at the slide from before, that there was waste oils.
Yes,
and-
that's all included with the proposed.
That is,
site
okay,
layout, yes.
waste oils and yard waste.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all on the site, yeah.
Will you have the ability to, the yard waste in?
It's what yard waste is currently taken to the city of Durham's facility for processing.
But
No, we won't be
On-site.
processing on the site, no.
There are some constraints with the site, given where it's located with respect to the impervious area allotment. So we're pretty tight with respect to impervious area and pads that would be needed for that type of process work.
We doing question?
So we had our recommendations for the best management practices. The county is in the process or has the rights to acquire a private piece of property off 15501, sort of centrally located between the two existing sites. It does have significantly improved access, especially during the winter, where access to the sites can be somewhat limited. And again, we're incorporating compacted loads with materials, so it should reduce significantly any kind of wind-blown litter that may be observed at this. So we have done some community outreach to members of both Rougemont and Bahama. We had an open house in March, which was pretty well advertised, both at the existing sites. Flyers were handed out. We had a press release. There was information on the county's website. We actually had 48 attendees come. It was a kind of an open format where folks kind of walked through the different steps of the process. We had presentation boards up and some maps. We received verbal and written comments at that time. Many of the residents really liked the layout, felt it would be a significant improvement from the current facilities. Again, they had some asks of us to incorporate opportunities for electronic waste, paint, tires, household hazardous waste. Not currently in the county's program, but the site probably can accommodate some of that in the future. Probably maybe not all of it, but certainly some of it with respect to the footprint that we have proposed. And there was some concerns about the entrance to the facility, given the rate of speed on 15501. In consultation with DOT, we have put in, or are proposing to put in a right turn lane for facility users who are coming northbound. Southbound users will continue to use the median crossing. So this facility is directly across the street from the fire station, Bahama 2. So that median crossing is there. The right turn lane there would allow the residents to decelerate and make a right-hand turn into the facility. So also on the proposed plan, this is the proposed site. Again, it's actually two properties that are owned by the same family on 15501. It's a total of 24 acres. Where actually most of the development is going to be just on the southernmost parcel. But we do need both parcels as part of the acquisition and to get us to the allotment for impervious area that's needed for the project. So the project would include a combination of both of those lots into a single parcel and then development of the facility on the 10-acre plus or minus parcel. So pretty pictures, and I've got some other photos with some other maybe more telling on what the facility may actually look like. But you see the right turn lane, which is on the bottom of the screen. That's the with significant sight distance. That's not an issue at all for vehicle movement. Right turn lane coming into the facility. We have a shared driveway with the existing abutter, the Crabtree family, who's been engaged. We have engaged all along the process. They have an existing curb cut, if you will, for a gravel driveway there. And that's their only location because of the median crossing and the proximity to the fire station where we could put a driveway to the facility. There'll be a shared driveway entrance with some easements that will be required. As users come into the site, they would proceed in a counterclockwise fashion. The gravel road that you see hatched in brown is where the commercial traffic would be for roll-off trucks coming to pick up materials off the compactor or the roll-off containers. And then the paved area is the gray. They would proceed in a counterclockwise fashion. On the outside edge of the upper loop would be where oil wastes, food waste perhaps at some point maybe in the future, electronics, lead acid batteries would be collected and stored. And that would be under a canopy, and we'd have a sump there as well to collect any kind of potential spills and stored in a storage. So that would be, environmental improvement certainly of what's currently operated. As they continue on, there will be white goods drop-off, either on a pad or in roll-off containers for easy removal, again, refrigerators and ovens and washers and dryers. That layout includes 2 lanes. So the inside lane would be for residents who are just going to use the recycling and trash and yard waste drop-off. Residents that want to use the white goods or the oil material would be on the outbound lane, again, not block traffic of residents who are just wanting to use the traditional convenience center service. As they proceed counterclockwise, they would have yard waste available for drop-off, bulky waste, recycling materials, and also 2 locations for MSW. So where your current facilities are drive-through, you have to stop at the top of the retaining wall and drop off your bulky waste on one side or your MSW on the other, and residents behind them have to wait for them to finish dropping off the materials. We actually have 7 spots where someone can back into and basically park their car and have easy access to both recyclables and MSW. But be a significant improvement, increase the throughput for the site, but also the safety with respect to not having mixed traffic, having the availability of multiple spots for drop-off. So the landscape diagram, and one of the interesting features of the site is, we do have Mountain Creek coming through the site. We've got a riparian buffer that we have to stay off of. So there's significant setbacks already just based on site plan requirements for locations of the site. If there's going to be a site that's out of sight, out of mind, this is it. You're not going to, other than the driveway entrance, you're not going to see the facility from 15501. And the Crabtrees to the east aren't going to see the facility as either. We have 175 feet of extremely dense wooded buffer that we're going to maintain between their property line and the facility. So we certainly meet all the requirements for buffer and opacity with respect to plantings. We do have some supplemental plantings that are required for the parking spaces and impervious area. We're going to dress up the entrance a little bit with some additional plantings there, and we would provide site lighting around the facility for operations that may be just in the morning as you're operating, and then in winter months when dusk comes on us a little bit earlier towards the operation. But this would not be something that's operated 24 hours a day. It's a typical 7 to 6 operation on site. The facility will include an attendant building and an attendant shelter. The attendant building would actually be 2 stories, so that's going to include meeting space. Sheriff's office would actually have a location here if so desired. I know Mo has been in consultation with them about providing some a location for them. The bottom floor would be reserved really for the sheriff's office, and for
The upper floor.
upper floor would be up for the sheriff's office.
Bottom would be for us.
And bottom would be for you, and then we've got an ADA accessible bathroom as well. Currently there are no restrooms at any of the convenience sites other than the porta toilets. So this would be a fully accessible ADA restroom facility. The attendant shelter would provide some storage as well as 360-degree observation of the site operations through the glass and through the balcony area on the top. But it'll be attractive but very functional use for the site. So attendants this will be used for storage of materials, communication devices, computers, but also where they, in a slow time, they can be doing paperwork, and they'll know when someone comes on site and then what area they may need assistance.
It'll also be a swap shop, because we know that that has been one of the things that the community has liked. And so there'll be a capacity for a swap shop. You're looking like,
I'm thinking, is it
what's
like a
that?
thrift store?
So yeah, it's kind of like a thrift store, except for there's no cost for you to
Give
come
something,
in.
give something, take something.
Yeah, for you to come in and say, oh, I like
It
that
is, I like
table. And so someone who's left the table that they no longer needed, you can come and get.
And that swap shop will be secured, so that's secured with a roll-up door. The facility is going to be completely secured as well through fencing and locked gates, but the swap shop itself will be secured.
Ask about this. We waiting?
Let's wait, and then we'll wait, and then we'll ask questions.
Sure.
I think he's almost done.
I'm working. These are some photographs of a site we recently completed for Wake County. This is in Wendell off of 64 Business. So this would be similar to the layout of the retaining walls and the back-end stalls. We've provided an overhead canopy for shelter. It's not for the dumpsters, it's actually for the residents. So as they, on an inclement day, they back into the facility, they're actually covered. So their back trunk, they've got a roof over their head. Does not cover over the dumpsters. Most of the dumpsters are going to be completely sealed and enclosed because they're using compaction equipment. But we would provide striping, some collapsible bollards as well for backing vehicles into the spots, plenty of space for maneuvering. So this is looking at 4 different bays. We're going to have 6 locations at the combined site here off of 15501, but it'll be a very similar layout to this in appearance. Just another photograph, same thing. There's Wake County uses some signage and coloring to help direct residents to what the materials are that go to each location. It's a little signage overload, but I think it's helpful, and certainly as folks get used to the locations that they visit most often, and there'll be staff there as well to direct. But very similar layout with a hopper arrangement for recyclables, and then kind of a larger hopper for the garbage disposal or bulky waste drop. This is the low side of the retaining wall, so this is where the dumpsters and the compactors would be. So dumpsters would be the open top for the roll-off containers, and then the enclosed containers would be for the recyclables, the bulky waste, and the MS. So permitting, this does require a special use permit for the use of a government facility in the residential RR and RS20 zone. We're required to have conformance with the special requirements for that special use, including the opacity buffer and setbacks from the riparian buffer. And again, we're also providing the 175-foot. So our facility is up as far as it can get on to the north and away from 15501 and from Crabtree residents that we can get, and still have a facility that's going to work for flow and for grading perspective. Provide the right turn lane for vehicles coming in northbound. Again, use the existing median crossing. There's been a lot of collaboration, coordination with the direct residents, and determine that there isn't any adverse effect on public or property values for the area. And that's part of the test that we have to meet as part of the special use permit application that's been submitted. So we are scheduled right now for July 23rd to be heard by the zoning for the special use permit and site plan application, which have been submitted concurrent with each other. The level 4 site plan. Again, we're combining those 2 lots to a total of 24 acres. We're disturbing about 3.5 acres. Some of that disturbance is the old homestead and areas that were cleared at one point. That property had been cleared of timber some years back, so the growth of trees, of the stand of trees on it, are pretty immature and really of not much value. There are some substantial trees that are left, and we're actually preserving 3 of those in the area of the kind of the central portion of the site. And providing tree protection fencing for those to maintain them. We're not providing any impacts to the floodplain, the riparian buffer. We're meeting the 6% impervious area by 30 square feet. No, it's tight, but we've got a facility that works for what the county needs for long term. And through the stormwater control measures, we've got maintain the peak pre-development flows, and also reduce the nutrient loading through a biofiltration system. This is not served by county water, so it'll be an individual water well and a septic system. And we already have the septic system improvement permit. So project timeline, we are here towards the end of June. The special use permit and site plan applications were first made in April. We've had a revised set of plans submitted based on comments, and the public hearing's been scheduled for July 23rd. Provided that we do receive the special use permit, the county is then in a position to acquire both parcels. Following that, there will be a lot recombination, and then we get into final design through the summer and fall with the hopes of bidding the project over the winter and commencing construction in early 2020. So that is our abbreviated presentation. This would normally take us 2 hours, but hopefully we didn't consume too much of your time here this evening.
Well, thank you for that great update. Questions, comments from board members? Commissioner Recco?
Well, it looks like a great site design. I want to thank you for this briefing. And I was just curious, you mentioned facilities for the sheriff. Is this going to take the place of this current kind of northern Durham substation?
No.
This is in addition?
So the sheriff's staff came to me and said, is there any capacity for us to have any observation points and you're going to have a bathroom there? Is it, can our officers actually come and sit down and write reports, and could they ever use it for observation in the area? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. But usually, we just have a very small facility. Said, well, it would really be helpful if you could kind of include us in your design, especially in the northern area, because our facilities are so small there and we do have several officers there. And I said, well, okay, we're all a team.
They're on top of each other.
Yeah,
and
we're all a
others
team, so,
really need
maybe
room.
we can work something out. And so then I asked the sheriff's staff with regards to, well, what if we have a second story on this facility so that, one, we have an observation. This is a large parcel of land, so that we have an observation of the portion of the land that we're not using. I've been talking to Eddie about maybe we can have the Girl Scouts out there or the Boy Scouts out there, or, folks to come out and actually see the natural portion of the land that's out there, because it really is kind of pretty. They've got a natural stream in there, maybe we can do a little path through there, but we still need the observation point. And so I said, really, this would help everybody. We can get everybody included. If we have a second story and they want to bring children down there, they can go up to the second story, they can have a meeting, they can do a presentation to the kids, they can talk about the natural resources that are out there in the lake, the stream that's out there, and the stream buffers and things like that. So we're trying to make this not only a facility for our community to dispose of garbage, but maybe even a training facility so that our children can understand, look, we need to recycle. We need to take care of our community. And so we're trying to do both.
So the sheriffs will be up on the second floor?
The sheriff will have access to the second floor, yes.
I see. Okay, well, it's interesting, and I appreciate it. I mean,
Mhm.
I think to the degree that we can do multi-purpose facilities for more than one department, I think that's a great move.
Right.
Actually, it also adds a little more security to the site. that
Absolutely.
Sheriff's cars will be going out. So I think it's a good thing. So thank you all for your great work on this.
Commissioner Hill?
Sure. Glad you talked about recycling. Recycling, I know I used to work for Durham's impact team. I was a supervisor there, and recycling was hot, right, in the late 90s.
Mhm.
Now, not so much. China doesn't allow plastics to come into its country. The Philippines, other countries in Asia and Africa are saying, no more, we don't want your waste. Guilford and Greensboro, I think, have stopped recycling altogether. Is this something, it's in the 25-year plan, is this something that's going to exist? Not 25 years and 25 months, so we're going to have kind of encouraging people to recycle when this could cost us more than than trash.
Well, we are talking with Orange County with regards to maybe even doing some initiatives with regards to separating glass, because glass is still a valuable resource for recycling. And,
Okay.
you know, I mean, you have counters
Sure.
that actually have glass inlaid in them.
Mhm.
So we do know that there are some challenges and there are some costs associated with recycling, but I think in the world economy, I don't think that recycling is going to go away. We have to do something with the plastics in this world and the products that we are overproducing.
Sure. Also, solar, any opportunity to put any solar out there?
That's a good question. I don't know that we've really delved into looking at a solar solution out there, but I know that there may be some opportunities.
There could be some opportunities with rooftop units, certainly on the attendant building, but as far as a solar field.
No, not
Solar rooftop certainly could be something that could be worked into the design if it's an alternative.
Okay.
But yeah, we'd have to look at the tree coverage because we're intentionally being pretty significant buffer for other reasons.
Okay.
So you may reduce your sun availability because.
Okay, thank you.
Looks
Commissioner
beautiful,
Carter.
looks fantastic. I like the idea of the solar. I think we should put solar panels on any new roof we put on county buildings, just FYI.
FYI, we're talking about actually having a metal roof on this.
Awesome.
And potentially the canopy roofs as well, because those could serve as not only shelter for the users of the facility, but they could also be solar panel holders.
I'm sorry, you
Not-
said,
not the-
what was it you said you were thinking about?
The canopy roofs over the drop-off areas.
Over the drop-off
Oh, okay.
areas
That's
for
all
the-
metal roof too, which would accommodate fastening of the solar panels. Now,
Okay.
it wouldn't power the compactor, but it could help with site lighting and things.
Lighting,
idea.
yeah. Well, I'm so excited about this, and I wish that the folks who were here earlier from Rougemont could be here for this, because this is really an important investment in the northern part of the county. I mean, again, we often feel like that some areas of our community don't get as much attention that they deserve, and I think that this is a service that people really depend on in this part of our community, and the fact that this will be really attractive and convenient, and people who already go to one of the other sites 4 times a week, well, they're going to come here every day. But I just think it looks really attractive, and so thank you to staff for your role in making sure that this was the best it can be, and our awesome real estate staff in the back who found this great location. I mean, it's a fantastic location.
Yes.
I'm really excited about this. So just to be clear about which uses do we currently not have programmed that people did want?
So some of the uses that I'm aware of is especially with hazardous waste, paint products and that type of thing. So we don't generally do that, and we haven't in the past. So that is one thing. One of the questions was, well, we don't want to go down to the stadium to shred our paper, or to pick up our TVs and electronics and things like that. Well, the site will accommodate us bringing, for example, a trailer and having an electronics day. And it's more convenient for them to have it at their site versus coming all the way down to the stadium.
Right.
So there are some opportunities that we would be able to do some of the things that we've done at the stadium in the past with the city that we could do for our residents in Bahama and Rougemont. And if folks from Durham County want to come out there, they could do that too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. So we'll be able to do some of these, maybe even tire collection, conceivably bring something out there.
Bring
to
a
collect.
trailer out to actually do that for collection day, but it wouldn't be on a routine basis like they do in
Just
Raleigh.
special events. We might even get some of those sites cleaned up in Rougemont. that we had to create a nuisance ordinance for.
Well, we have a young lady who has been working extremely well with getting sites cleaned up. We actually, she found one of the tire companies. I think there were roughly about 700 tires that they had put in a gully, and she got the company that put them in that gully. They cleaned them out in 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
And disposed of.
Actually drove from Charlotte. They had the truck come from Charlotte.
Wow. That is awesome. We didn't know about that. Well, kudos to you all.
Can she negotiate my next contract?
Wow. That is fantastic.
So, so we're making progress in that area also with staff that we've hired recently. So
that's fantastic. So obviously, Mo, deer-resistant plantings. I heard you say you were going to landscape the entrance, but I noticed that the building is like brick. It looks like you're trying to go for low-maintenance materials.
Right.
For you.
And I'm going to be very honest. This is 2019.
Yeah.
Folks shouldn't be in a shack.
Right, exactly.
And shouldn't be with a porta
I'm thrilled that our staff is going to have a bathroom, and it's real. This is huge. It really is huge, and I love what came out with the because I was going to ask you what are some other possible uses, because it's a 25 acre site. We're only using 3 something acres
because of the impervious surface. So we have to leave that natural portion of the site in order to have the roadway configurations that we have and the gravel configurations and the separation of the community traffic from the haulers traffic. So as you notice, the haulers traffic is on the outside circle and the gray inside circle is for the community.
And we spend about 20% of that impervious area just getting up to the to the site location
to the
as well.
site,
with the driveways.
right. But it's fantastic that you're going to the possible partnership with Soil and Water and doing environmental education. Great. So thank you all so much. All right. Let's hope we get that special use permit.
Darius Allen at the end, he visits planning on a regular basis. If they don't give us that special use, he'll probably have a
Well, that's the Board of Adjustment, right? So, yeah, you're going to be nice to those Board of Adjustment members. Thank you. So next we have assessment factors for disposition of county-owned real property. And our fantastic real estate staff that found the site.
Good evening. Given the lateness of the hour, we will be quick to go through this very brief presentation and then open it up for any questions that you might have. Just to kind of remind everybody where we started, the real estate, Open Space and Real Estate Division did a property inventory of all county-owned properties. We brought that to the board last fall. Following that presentation was the board retreat, and during the retreat we talked about 6 specific parcels that were included in the inventory that were probably not being put to their highest and best use, and talked about prioritizing those for disposition. From that discussion that we had at the retreat, you asked us to come back with some framework and guidelines for information that you might want to be considering as you're making decisions about what parcels to keep, what parcels to sell, what parcels to perhaps do a public-private partnership to achieve some public policy goals that the board might have. We brought you back a tool and talked about some of the elements of that tool at your work session in March. During that work session, you asked that we make a couple of specific changes and additions to that tool, which we have done, including making sure that the county strategic plan is explicitly included in the adopted plans and policies that are to be considered as you're evaluating these parcels. We have included a discussion, if you recall, we talked about human capital and inclusiveness, and we have included that now in the tool to discuss how properties could be used to support investment in human capital and foster inclusiveness of underserved residents in redeveloping areas, including downtown. And you also asked that we take a closer look at the opportunity cost of the highest choices or the most likely choices for how to dispose of a parcel. What would the opportunity cost of that be? And so we, when we bring a completed report back to you, we will be sure to include a discussion of those opportunity costs in that report. Just to remind you, the tool has a map and some basic information about the parcel, and then we go into discussion of the history, the acquisition history, the current tenants who are occupying the parcel, if it's a building, obviously occupying the building, but what, you know, who's using the parcel now and what would the impact on those folks be. Talking about the Durham County interest in the parcel or in the property. Go ahead. Financial considerations, legal considerations, the adopted plans and policies, which we alluded to at the beginning of this talk. Economic development, what is the opportunity for any of these parcels to achieve some economic development goals in the area. Partnerships, who would be our partners? DHA, Durham Public Schools, the city, and potentially others. The opportunity to use a parcel for increasing the stock of affordable housing. The report will also talk about issues of timing that may be important in helping you make a decision about how to move forward on any given. Again, we're going to talk about the human capital and inclusiveness component and the opportunity cost of the most desirable options that might be available to you. And with that, we will take your questions.
Thank you so much. And any comments or questions related to the assessment that is being proposed right now? Anybody want to?
Really good. I just think it's excellent. It was the first draft you brought to us was already quality, and this one's even better. And you really did a good job with helping to define human capital for us. And yeah, thank you.
Any other input?
So using
Suggestions?
this template, when do you think you'll be able to bring forward analysis?
We'll let Jane respond to that.
Maybe switch to that one, Jane. I think that one might be dead.
That one. How about that? Yeah.
That sounds good.
So in March, we brought you one example of 907 East Main. That was the property in front of Golden Belt. We did get just some feedback from you even during the work session that it was such an obvious property to work with DHA and with the city of Durham because all three entities owned property on this block. We've already begun those discussions. Back in March, you all had seen us run through these factors and the potential for that property to be used in a partnership opportunity was what the board had provided feedback on. So I did want you to know that we've already begun those discussions, and it will still be a little while before you hear back, but we heard what you were saying in terms of that. For some of the other properties, you will recall that Deputy Director Manns had talked about a longer range study where we were going to be working with the city on taking a slightly broader look at how a lot of these parcels could be used, not necessarily all of them. The city is in the beginning stages of that, but when we're really looking at how to be both proactive and kind of holistic about downtown. We really don't want to be making decisions in a vacuum. We want to be understanding what's happening with the school properties, what's happening with the city of Durham properties. And so we do need to allow that, that consultant study to kind of play itself out on those other ones.
And what's the timing for the consultant study?
Perry was hoping he wouldn't have to come up and rescue us at 10 of
Well,
10.
Harry's walking up.
Yep.
Related to the East Main Street
Mm-hmm.
site that interface DHA, I just want to say that there was a threat
Mm-hmm.
last fall by
Dad.
designers
Yeah.
looking at East Main.
Mm-hmm.
And that site provoked a lot of discussion and interest, and some interesting drawings were done, so you might want to reach out
Yeah. Thank you.
to Dad, just see some of the ideas people were generating for what could be done in that area.
Sure. Thank you.
So to answer your question, Commissioner Reckow, we have, when I say we, that's all of us, that's all of the stakeholders, DHA, the city, our staff. We have been working to discuss how we're going to approach that consultant study. We're in the process of drafting an RFQ. We will all review it to make sure that we have captured our intent. And at some point, we'll be coming back to you once we receive those responses, because it will have to be some type of cost share with the city, of course, to accomplish what we want to do holistically. So we haven't really laid out a true timeline because we've just started those conversations there, and there's so many stakeholders involved. We have to make sure we capture what everybody's objectives are. So we'll be reporting back to you at some time. I'd say, if I had to guess, it would probably be maybe 3 or 4 months before we would come back to you with the actual cost share allocation for that scope of work.
And I'd like to put a pin in the small parcel that I guess we own that's across the street, part and parcel of the parking lot, surface parking.
315 Holland.
Yeah, I mean, that parcel, probably we should, I mean, it seems like it would be appropriate to work out some.
Well, I
Deal with
don't,
this
I
city,
don't
don't you?
agree. I think we need to go through this assessment.
No, but I
so
know,
we'll-
I'm just saying, I just want to put that
Well-
out there, that I just wonder, because it's right now operated like it is a city lot, isn't it?
Well, I think they're renting it from us or something, right?
I mean, and the city has expressed interest in obtaining that lot.
Right.
That's part of,
I would,
what this
I wouldn't,
overall
I would
Um,
want to use this
No,
assessment tool and go
I
through a process.
obviously, I just was putting a pin in it, but do we actually, is there a rental agreement?
there's no formal rental agreement.
Okay.
That's the whole point. I mean, they're earning revenue, but not. Because it has, I believe it has meters.
Is there any act required?
Well, so before we move on from this, I did actually have a few possible, I guess when I read this, I know we've been working on this for a while. One thing that I think it's great, but one thing that did jump out at me is when we say human capital / inclusiveness, I kind of felt like we're kind of talking around it, but we're not addressing the question of equity, because to me, I think when we talk about, that we want to marginalized groups to be included in the revitalization of downtown Durham, I think maybe the language should more directly address that, create more equity, or help us address equity issues, because I think that's when we talk about, what we're talking about, community benefits and some of our other county goals. I mean, racial equity and equity is part of that. So when I read it over this time, I kind of felt like we somehow we ended up not mentioning anything about equity.
So the
Yeah.
term of consideration and sort of priority for marginalized groups is not adequate for what you're referring.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I think I prefer, I mean, maybe what I could send you, I mean, again, I don't want to take up a lot of people's time right now, but if there's a way to word that section a little bit differently, I think, to say that we're trying to create a more equitable, inclusive, equitable downtown. So that was just one thing that jumped out at me. And the other thing that I realized we didn't refer to at all is just anything related to transit-oriented land uses and development. I think that's another kind of goal of ours that we didn't necessarily refer to anywhere.
Well,
so
We have adopted plans.
okay, adaptive plans,
yeah,
maybe.
you have adopted plans, and under the affordable housing section, you definitely have availability of transit as one of the things that are
good.
focused on.
Right, so that takes care of that. So maybe you could just look at that language for number 12 and see how we can just incorporate that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the board, in your consideration, if you choose to move adoption of this, could choose to move that with that sentiment included, and we can work
Yeah.
on the wording rather than it coming
Yes,
back a third time.
absolutely.
So moved.
Leave it up to you.
Second.
All right. Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Reckow. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much for your great work. And this will be helpful when we look at the building next door. our county attorney is adding those up, it has come to my attention that we need to vote on the salary increases that I announced after the closed session. So I would also move that they be implemented as of the anniversary date for each of those employees. So I think we need to.
I would move, we probably need.
Yeah, let me just state again that the board is proposing for the salaries to be implemented as of the anniversary date for the following positions: for the sheriff, $154,602. Register of Deeds, $105,541. For the deputy tax administrator, interim tax administrator, $107,544. The clerk to the Board of County Commissioners, $85,000. And the county attorney, $209,931. Second. Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the salaries increases are unanimously approved.
Commissioners, I have your results, but first, I've got a point that I need to discuss with you, and that is, a couple of months ago, you all voted that you wanted everyone to be selected based upon at least by 3. And so for the Women's Commission, you have 5 that are clear, but another one it looks like the highest vote getter is 2. Sure. Okay. All right. So the results of your votes are as follows. For the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, you can select one person. You selected George Tate. For the Board of Adjustment, you can select one person. You selected Jacob Rogers. For the Citizens Advisory Committee, you could select one person. You selected Matt Lawing. For the Dangerous Dog Appeal Board, you could select one person. You selected Barbara Kirsch. For the Durham Technical Community College Board of Trustees, you could select one person. You selected Tara Fikes. For the Environmental Affairs Board, you can select 2, and you've selected Jesse Burkhead and Jennifer Hill. For the Homeless Advisory Committees, you could select 1. You've selected Angelo Birch. For the Jury Commission, you could select 1 individual. You selected Tanette Amos. For the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, you could select 2 individuals. You've selected Alan Lang and Nisha Williams. For the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, you could select 1 person. You've selected Shirley Gentry. For the Sports Commission, you could select 1 person. You've selected Tommy Hunt. We're going to skip the Women's Commission. And for the Workforce Development Board, you've selected Jeff Durham. Those are your results.
Thank you very much. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Reckow. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimously adjourned. See everybody July 8th. That's